Yes, Brad Brady. I'm Vice President of Year Out Energy here in Littleton.
Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Supla. I'm an account executive with ABM, covering municipalities and K-12.
And Brian.
Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Firestone with McKinstry. Been with McKinstry for, oh gosh, a little over 2.5 years. I'm an account executive with higher education, state entities, healthcare, and special projects eco district.
Thank you. Rob.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Rob Severe. I am a account executive with Amoresco.
Great, thank you. And Cole?
Hello, everyone. My name is Cole Shapansky. I'm actually an account executive intern with Schneider Electric. So thanks for having me today.
Great, welcome. Carl?
Oh, sorry, I had to get it off mute. Carl Hurst with Iconergy. Good
Wonderful.
afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Carl. And Oscar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Oscar Rangel with Mid-State Energy.
Wonderful. Dan?
Hey, afternoon, everyone. This is Dan Walsh. I'm with Amoresco, and I oversee the Midwest. So it's good to be on the call with everyone.
Welcome. Zachary. Or Zach, sorry.
Either way, Zach Martinez, Johnson Controls Business Development Director. Thanks so much.
Welcome. Doug?
Sorry for the pause there, folks. Doug Hargrave with Iconergy.
Oh, welcome. Will?
Hey there, Will Benish here with Schneider Electric, account executive serving K-12 market.
Nice, welcome. David?
I'm David Clamage, Managing Director at Salisbury Hill Financial and Senior Energy Efficiency Consultant for Generate Capital.
Wonderful, welcome, David. And I have a phone number, I think 720-273 is you, Karen, correct?
Yes, that's me.
Okay, so then I have 317-997-1378.
Yeah. Hi there, and sorry, I'm on the road right now. This is Caleb Shin. I'm an account exec with Schneider Electric, and I serve the K-12, the healthcare, and the community market here in Colorado.
Wonderful, welcome. Okay, well, I am really hoping that this is our last quarterly meeting that we will have to Zoom it. So, right, guys?
Yeah,
I won't have to call out names. We'll all be face to face and looking at each other's faces. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Rod.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to a in-person meeting here in next September. And we already had some ideas for that meeting, and it's on the agenda at the very end of the agenda. So, but like I said, I have a few minutes because our office is in the process of hiring 3 new staff. Today, we're hiring a new planner. We're also hiring some individuals with expertise in preventing wages. But I'm here to talk just about a couple items. There's 2 pieces of legislation, and I know the Energy Office is going to address one of them later. I'm going to start off with a piece of legislation titled Global Warming Potential of Building Materials. Predominantly, that deals with asphalt, glass, and other stuff. Nothing that we generally do through an EPC project, but it's out there anyway. And so hopefully it should not be an issue for us. The other one is benchmarking, and that deals with buildings 50,000 square feet or more in the Energy Office, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, so I won't dive into it. The other thing is preventing wages. For public works projects over $500,000, starting Thursday, prevailing wages need to be followed by the contractor. And for a project over $1 million, there needs to be the apprentice program as part of the contractors. And so it's going to be up to us to help our clients track prevailing wages on the monthly basis to make sure our contractors that you hire meet the requirements. It's not going to be fun. Some of you already have this experience, but for the state, it's only applicable again for public works projects that do not receive federal funds. That's a critical component. Our office is going to work more on policy on that. We have some policy. We are in the process of hiring 2 individuals to help state agencies track that. And depending how it goes out, our office will help your clients, if they're schools or higher ed or state agencies, on tracking and verifying prevailing wages. That's about all I have time for. Yes.
Yes. Can I just clarify that though? Because you said schools. I was under the impression it would only be state agencies and higher education.
Correct. When I say schools, since I only deal with higher ed, I mean, I have one K through 12 school, and that school is deaf and blind. So you're right.
Yep,
If I say schools, it means the ones I deal with, higher ed.
Yep. So this bill for any of our municipal customers, special districts, school districts, this is not applicable.
I would love to say yes, but I have to clarify that.
Okay.
Because it says public works, but I have to read the language in the actual bill to see if they call out exempts municipalities in K through 12.
And do you know who's sponsoring that bill, Rod?
Oh, it passed. It got passed a couple years ago. The implementation date is Thursday.
Okay.
That's the thing. It passed. And finally, they gave our office funds for staff to help it happen. The bill did not. But I'll look into that if it includes K through 12 and municipalities and special districts.
And Rod, I think it might be helpful if we had a little more detail on what is going to be required for that apprenticeship program. You know, I think there's probably some interpretation on what could qualify. And so I'm wondering, does it actually need to be like a registered apprenticeship program through CareerWise or you know, some other detail on that I think would be helpful.
That's part of our office as staff finally to roll out. I mean, that was the issue in the bill. It was passed years ago. It was assumed we can do this with in-house staff. We knew that was not the case. We now have staff to help us roll that out. And so that the next meeting, I'll definitely have more information. And one other thing I want to talk about shortly. We know we have the ESCO conference in Austin. I've been assigned to help come up with an ESCO showcase innovation private sector programs. I've reached out to one of the ESCOs in Colorado already to see if they're interested in presenting a 15-minute presentation in Austin in September. And it's about unique projects. And so if you have a unique project that you would like or think would be beneficial to present, please reach out to me as soon as you can. The ESCO National is trying to finalize their agenda here in the next week. But like I said, I've already reached out to one ESCO. Hopefully I get a positive response from them this week. And if so, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'll probably reach out to everyone again. Yeah, whatever for the chat. Well, I need to go. I need to get into my interview panel. So have a good meeting. And if you have any questions, email me. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
So we'll go ahead and go right into the secretary's report.
Okay, so for me, we really just need to do approval of the Q1 minutes, which everybody should have in their inbox from last time around. So if there is a motion to approve.
I'll motion that.
All right, and a second.
This is Karen. I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. So the Q1 minutes are approved. And that's all I've got. So I get to turn it back over, I think maybe to Karen for treasurer's report. Karen?
Hi, everybody. I do have one quick question. Has Outreach prepared any kind of budget that needs to come forward at the next meeting?
Yeah, I would say that we are working on that right now, Karen, and we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about that in the outreach committee section. So we're working on it.
Okay, but nothing right now. I'm just asking because I would have to be sure that I have that accounted for, because nothing I have from Tracy shows any kind of deductions or reserves.
Yeah, I think, what we're trying to do is kind of partner up, and I'll ask our counterparts at the Energy Office to share a little bit if we got an extension on some of that funding, and that'll kind of give us a better sense of what our total budget is for next year. So Karen, I think I can definitely say ahead of next meeting, Ashley, myself, and Joe will be able to have a little more of a defined budget for what really 2021 and 2022 is going to look like for both maybe the summit, but also just our more standard outreach items that we do.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that said, we currently have a balance in our chapter fund of $12,931.43. And that is not going to reflect memberships that come in the next couple of months before our next meeting. So that amount will go up significantly because we have a lot of people whose memberships need to be paid. And that, of course, is the other list I have, which are currently we have a lot of memberships that renew in the fall and in the late summer. As people probably know, all of them don't renew on the same timeline. So if you don't know when you are due to renew, please let me know, and I can PM you or let you know when you're due. But we have probably half the members whose memberships are due to renew this summer in July, August. Currently, we have 35 members, and that is, I guess, through the end of May. Is that right, John?
I'd have to look at what that document showed from Tracy, but I think that's right.
Right. So again, if your membership is up for renewal this summer, and over half of them are, please go online to energyservicescoalition.org and you can handle it there. And if you're not sure if your membership is up for renewal, if you want to PM me, I can let you know what the date is.
And hey, Karen, I think that spreadsheet that we get from National has everybody's date. Is there any problem with just circulating that to the whole chapter so people could look at it themselves?
I don't have the mailing list. I could send it to the secretary to circulate.
All right, let's do that, because that way everybody can look at it and see exactly where they're at.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to forward that to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Actually, you have it, so.
Yeah, I think I do. I just wanted to make sure there's no reason I can't circulate that.
No, there's no reason you can't. It's just, it's just a spreadsheet. I think the big thing is that people drop off of it once their membership expires, has been the habit in the past. So anybody who was due to renew prior to now is not going to show up on this list. And I think that may be why we've operated off, your master list as opposed to this one.
Okay, that's good to know. And Karen, I was also hoping maybe you could give us a little bit of historical context. That 35 current members, can you tell us how that compares over your, extended time with the ESC?
Well, the ESC is an interesting animal. People change companies, but they stay members. People leave the industry, they drop off, new people come in and replace them. It's really, it's more about an averaging, I think, than if we're retaining the same people, because we don't retain the same people. So 35 is correct for us. I mean, it's right in the middle of where we've been. It's not at the bottom and it's not at the top. But if you look at the mix and where they all come from, the current active members are very reflective of where our memberships come from in the past.
Great, thanks. I just want to make sure we're keeping an eye on our numbers and it's staying healthy.
Yeah, and again, individuals come and go, but you really look for representation from each of the different areas, and that's consistent.
Great, thanks for providing that.
So Karen, I have a question for you. So when we have the funds in our account, are there any type of bylaws where that has to be spent? Can it roll over? How does that work for the chapter?
That's a really good question. The funds are ours as a chapter to use, and up to a certain amount, we can spend it for, lunches or entertainment, small things. But when the numbers are large, they have to be voted on by our chapter, and our parent club does not have the ability to expend any of the funds of our chapter without us voting to approve that they do so.
Okay. And it can roll over year to year, is that correct?
Yes, it always does.
Okay.
So Karen, what is that amount that we need to go to vote? Like, for example, if we're going to be putting down a deposit on a venue potentially for a summit, that'd probably be a couple $1,000 expense. Does that need a vote?
Yes.
Is there an actual dollar amount that we need to be following?
So about 5 or 6 years ago, the chapter membership had approved, I want to say 4,000 or 5,000 to be used in total for outreach. And we tracked that, but the approval is now well out of date. So it will need to come back to the membership when you have a budget to approve it for the event. And I would write it in such a way, that it's, the chapter approves up to an amount of, or not to exceed amount to be expended without having to come back to the chapter for each and everything.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Karen or in the treasurer's report? Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and next item on our agenda is the report from the Colorado Energy Office. So Dylan and Jacques, do you want to take the floor?
All right. So I guess first update, you all may have gotten out of office messages from Delynn Southern. So she's out on maternity leave for the months of June, July, August. Might not be aware that she was pregnant due to this online thing. Not seeing people in person, but she gave birth to a healthy son on June 3rd named Sullivan James Hubert, also known as Soli. So Delynn and the baby are doing well and will be out for the next 2 months. Some legislative updates. So one that we've been tracking and has implications for performance contracting in the state is House Bill 1253. I'll go ahead and put a link to that in the chat real quick. This bill appropriated $5 million in essentially stimulus funding to Department of Local Affairs for their Renewable and Clean Energy Grant Fund. This offering went live 2 weeks ago. They're trying to get the application is open on a rolling basis. So if you have projects that might fit into that funding criteria, the first step is to engage with the applicable DOLA regional manager. Jock and I have also met with Department of Local Affairs on this grant offering. So if you have any questions about applicability of different projects or what DOLA is looking for, how to make an application competitive, we're happy to chat about that as well.
Hey, Dylan, I got a question on that. You said that it's on a rolling basis, so this is separate from the standard windows that are opening here in August. Is that right?
Yeah, so that was one thing I wish I'd maybe asked DOLA directly is how it interfaces with their current ongoing windows, but that is correct as far as this one doesn't have any deadline where they get all of the applications and then judge them against each other. As they get applications, they're going to evaluate them on a rolling basis, determine if they are a good fit for the intent for those funds, and make an award. So as soon as that 5 million is awarded, then the offering will be finished instead of it all being on a certain window or date that those applications can be submitted. So the other bill that Rod mentioned is House Bill 1286. So that first URL I put in was for the DOLA website for their grant offering. I'm also going to put a URL in for this House bill. This is the one that's actually signed. Has a couple implications to our group here. The primary purpose of this was creating a building benchmarking program that's going to be hosted through the Colorado Energy Office. Our office is going to hire a new employee to host and manage a database, collect that information from buildings in the state of Colorado on their energy usage. In addition to that, there's some performance mandates that haven't been determined yet, but the legislation directed the Regional Air Quality Council to form a working group to come up with some performance mandates that will probably go into effect 5 or 6 years from now timeframe. That will impact all buildings in the state, public and private sector, so might help drive some work in the efficiency space. What got tacked onto that bill was also an update to the EPC statute for local government. So while that link I put in, it might be a good use of your time to review the benchmarking portion if that's of interest to you. But then at the very end of that bill, looks like it's page 24 out of 25 on that PDF, was an update to some of the definitions for local government EPC statute. Really, it was making the statute a little bit more clear on some things, and then it removed the requirement that not less than 1/10 of all payments be to be made by such board shall be made within 2 years from the date of execution of the contract. That was some requirement that we were never able to get a very clear direction on what the intent of that being in the legislation was or what its purpose was. So we're glad to see that removed and have more clarity there. The other thing is that it removed the requirement that payments need to be made within 12 years from the date of execution of the contract, except that the payments are shorter than the cost-weighted life of the equipment installed. So now the only requirement is that the term of payments need to be less than the cost-weighted average useful life of the equipment. So those are the applicable parts for House Bill 1286. Those are the legislative updates we were going to cover. Some more updates that we'll go through, but I'll pause right now to see if there's any questions on those so far.
I have a question.
I see one in the chat. Question, are we using Energy Star Portfolio Manager for the scoring of buildings? What is the scoring? The buildings are being held accountable. So I don't think it's determined yet what platform will be used. I know that City and County of Denver has one that the state, I believe, is looking at, but I don't believe it's determined what that benchmarking will be yet. And then I'm not sure what the question is with the scoring of buildings are being held accountable. That might be related to the performance mandates, which are not in effect yet, but early versions of the bill had performance mandates based around Energy Star scores, and if you were not compliant in hitting your Energy Star score, there would be a fee component to be paid by those who are not meeting the performance mandates. Okay. What point do we also use EUI? Not really sure what your question is, Brian.
Right. So, that was a big part of this this bill. So I know quite a bit about it, but one thing that is still not clear is what that Energy Star rating is going to have to be. From my understanding, I think it's 75. And then the other piece is EUI. So, you know, those are two different functions when we actually measure and monitor buildings, right? Totally two different things. And so are we going to be utilizing both of those to hold, hold this building stock accountable in terms of measurement? And I think your answer to that was that they haven't determined that yet. And I know that come October, the task force is going to be put together of a bunch of folks, energy experts in the industry, and they're going to be developing those building performance standards. And the first goal and piece of that is that 7% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So within 3.5 years, and then step that to 20% reduction by 2050. So I know that all that is part of this, but I'm just curious because I've been getting that question from building owners is, okay, are we going to be held to an Energy Star number, are we going to be looking at energy use intensities?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't believe at this point it's been determined. The initial versions of the bill, I did see 75 percentile Energy Star score. I think that was pretty contentious, and in order, basically how this current bill was passed was that there aren't any performance standards established yet, and that's to be determined by the working group, the task force, through the Regional Air Quality Council.
Okay, yeah, very good. I mean, it's something that I'm glad you and Jock are speaking to this today, because I know that everyone on this call is very interested to see what that is, how it was developed, and where it's going more than anything, because all of us have clients in this space that are going to be definitely questioning us, and especially on that public, on the public side, the public sector, because they're held to different standards. And I think you put the link there, but one thing that we can do, so we could put the link to the actual bill itself. It'll, I think that's what you did. Yeah. So that'll actually go through that and give all of us here on this call the difference between the public and private entities.
Yeah. And at our office, we have one of our colleagues, Kim Burke, has been most directly involved with that. So I also just put in the chat a link directly to the Energy Office's website. We have a page on building benchmarking. If you want to take a look at there's one thing that might be interesting is there's a spreadsheet of the preliminary list of all buildings that fall under that benchmarking ordinance, as well as some notes on different workshops that were held on the development of the bill. And then you can also register to get more involved with the further development of that bill.
And Dylan, just my last clarification piece, it's buildings over 50,000 square feet?
Yes, I believe that is correct. I haven't fully read the bill as it's been signed.
Yes, you're correct, Dylan. It's all buildings.
And Brian, you testified as part of this bill, right?
Yeah, 4 times. So
all right.
I was in the trenches, that's for sure. But now it's like all the little details, right, that are important to all of us, especially here in the ESCO world. So that's what I'm trying to kind of muffle through right now, and definitely.
So early on, there was some, as this bill was being created, there was some thought process from school districts that they would be exempt, but clearly reading through this, they are definitely included. Is that correct?
They are included. So here's the difference though. They're still going to be benchmarked, right? So the first phase of this, you guys, is measurement, right? Measuring everything. And then the second phase of this is implementation to those offenders out there that are, that aren't, however we measure it, right? Whether it's EUI or whether it's a score 75 or whatever that is. But if they're out of that range, then the second phase is they need to do some sort of implementation. And the difference between public and private is that, and I don't have the language in front of me, but it's basically they have to have a current retrofit project. So when they're doing a current retrofit project over $500,000, then they're required to make sure to abide by this program. But if they don't have a current project going, I think Jock, you and Dylan can help me on this, then they're not required to, drop everything and do the implementation right away.
Yeah, and I think that actually the way that came up was tied to the prevailing wages discussion that Rod mentioned. That's for projects over 500,000 also. And the thought was that entities would associate the two. If I need to do prevailing wages, I also need to hit performance standards that are still to be fully fleshed out. Okay, so I guess moving forward, reminder for end of year ESCO check-ins. If you're a ESCO in our CEO program, Jock sent out some time slots for that where you can register and select a time slot for the last 2 weeks of July. Reach out to Jock or I if you can't make one of those times or need to find a different time to connect. Right now, it's most likely going to be virtual. So we'll need to follow up with those meeting links and agendas. As of the 1st of this month, June 1st, the Energy Office officially, our staff, we can go back to the office, but we've still been told we can't have guests. So we're still waiting on the clear to be able to host meetings at our office and things like that. And we're hoping that will be very soon. Also want to mention tomorrow, which was the original time slot for this meeting, from 1 to 2:30 on the 30th, the Energy Office is hosting with the National ESC, as well as NASIO, the National Association of State Energy Offices, a webinar on performance contracting in the state of Colorado. So that webinar is all about Colorado, targeted for potential clients, political subdivisions on what does it mean to go through an energy performance contract in the state. What makes it a good, in what scenario would it be a good fit for your needs? Things like that. Again, all tailored for Colorado. So we're pretty excited about that. Jock, do you think you could dig up the invite for that and maybe throw it in the chat in case no one has it here?
Yep, I'll find that and throw it in the chat.
Cool. And then last things for our update is just wanted to, since this is the end of our state fiscal year, just wanted to run through some highlights of the last fiscal year. And then Jock will cover some of our strategic planning for next year, what we're focusing on. So, first and foremost, we hired and onboarded our newest team member, Jock Tuttle. So you hopefully all had the opportunity to work with Jock. We're excited to have him. But again, of course, Now we have Delin out for a couple months, so it's just the two, but officially we're at full force. So we had a goal this year of getting 15 MOUs, which was equal to the amount of MOUs we got last fiscal year, FY20. That was actually our highest MOU goal. So that we've ever had. We've been trying to keep up that momentum, and really glad to see that we've achieved 18 this year. So we've been successful there. This last fiscal year, for the first time, our office had a goal around driving and releasing RFPs through our office. We set a goal to release 5 RFPs, and we're happy to have 6 RFPs released. So those were for Carson County Hospital, City and County of Broomfield, Town of Dolores, Huerfano County, the Aurora Public Schools, their community campus project, and then most recently the YMCA of the Rockies. We had a goal of 9 IGA contracts and actually achieved 16. So that's a really high number. And we also got 21 EPC contracts, which is the highest that this program's had since 2011. So for the last 10 years, really saw a lot of momentum from COVID, projects that were maybe paused over the last year, finally getting to move forward. Entities excited about performance contracting due to budget constraints and really seeing the value in those budget neutral solutions. So really great it's been a really successful year for the program. And I think last thing to mention with the YMCA of the Rockies is that our office is piloting supporting for a new market sector of nonprofits. So that's something that we're our current capacity to support this sector is a little bit limited based on we don't actually have resources or funding or anything allocated, but we're taking on this as a demonstration of the value in supporting the nonprofit sector and hoping that it can successfully demonstrate that it is a market sector that we can provide further continual support into the future. So I guess before handing off to Jock, any questions on our FY21 achievements? All right, thanks.
Cool. So yeah, Dylan mentioned a lot of momentum on those projects, a lot of we were able to reach and surpass many of our goals. So makes sense to just sort of give a quick overview of some of the goals that we've planned for in the coming fiscal year for 2022. So starting off with just some general housekeeping items. We're looking at updating our website, make it work better, and also make it more user-friendly so that it's not just a wall of text. If you've been on the website recently, it's a little bit of exactly that, a wall of text with some broken links. So we're going to work on trying to make sure that makes all of the information that's relevant to the EPC program in Colorado and governing statutes more available to anybody that wants to access it through that website. Going off of that, we're also looking at updating and printing more of our collateral material. So likely we'll just update the program metrics, ESCO logos, and probably keep the format of the past collateral materials, but potentially if we're able to get a little bit more funding, we might be able to update that with a new sort of campaign, but more to come on that later. Nothing set in stone. Next, we're looking at trying to do some project case studies. So trying to work with our PR agent to get more press releases on EPC projects that are coming through our program and entering into the implementation stage. So we'd like to just be able to put a little bit more of a spotlight on projects that are moving into the implementation stage and achieving those greenhouse gas reductions, just those success stories from the EPC program. We're also looking for success stories that are showcasing new and innovative pieces of technology, just cool stories, cool case studies of ways that the EPC mechanism is being used in the state of Colorado for different levels of political subdivisions or community organizations, which Dylan just mentioned, and we'll get into it a little bit as well. We're still focusing on state agencies, even though in the past fiscal year we had some difficulties getting the ball rolling on that and getting some projects moving along in that area. So current strategy is to engage directly with state agency facility directors. Now you might ask, how does that differ from anything that we might have tried in the past? Well, in the background, there's still certainly been some hard work that's been, some progress made on it in terms of overcoming the IGA fee encumbrance issue. There are a couple different strategies that were assessed by our team along with Rod and certainly some other parties as well. And we do have that fiscal waiver that one particular controller at the state agency level said was not actually necessary to move forward. So in the case that with other agencies, it is deemed a necessary part of the process, we do have that ready to go at least. So we're hoping that at this point, while we engage with those state agency facility managers, it can be a little bit smoother and we have all the tools in our tool belt that we need to actually move forward on that and get an IGA going to lead into an EPC project implementation. So that is a goal of ours going forward into the coming fiscal year, and fingers crossed on that. Finally, big thing that's been talked about in the past year at the Energy Office, and I'm sure at a number of other organizations, is trying to work to integrate EDI principles, that's equity, diversity, and inclusion principles, into our programs, specifically in this conversation, the EPC program framework. So some things that we put into our strategic planning for the program, continuing to push for EPC projects in more rural areas. So those areas that fall into the far right column on our pre-worked IGA pricing table, greater than 75 miles away from the Denver metro area. Just trying to make sure that we're being inclusive of all agency or political subdivisions and potential clients throughout the state. We're also looking to update our EPC collateral to Spanish so that that can be distributed to a wider audience as well. We are looking at updating the RFP template to allow for clients to include goals for EDI inclusion in their projects, as well as including ESCO response sections in the RFP response to allow ESCOs to respond to those requests and how they would address those goals and those aspirations of the political subdivision. We're also exploring EPC for community-based organizations and nonprofits, as Dylan said, which opens up the door to a little wider market sector for who can be involved in the program than has historically been available. And so we're piloting that now with YMCA of the Rockies, but in the coming fiscal year, we hope to see at least one other project come through. And we are also exploring, we're setting up to explore some creative financing options. We, as everybody in here knows, there are certain gaps where underserved markets typically get skipped over by third-party financiers just because of the way that things work. And so it takes a little bit more creativity. So we're looking at trying to broaden our scope and engagement in that area as well. So that's a high level overview of what we've planned for in the coming year for the EPC program. Yeah, I'm not sure who it goes to next, but I guess I'll pass it off to John. Unless there are any questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions for Jack?
This is Brian. I don't have any question, but I would say you know, I know you guys don't make this decision, but if you could just pass this along, I would say that just with these new bills that were just passed, especially the benchmarking piece, you know, if you guys, I mean, it would be wonderful, right? If you guys could support the private side. So, you know, I do have some opportunity out there. Every once in a while, we do take a look at private entities that have large portfolios. And as you guys know, I mean, all of us know on this call, they look at these projects a little bit differently and how they attack them and how they fund them. And the cash flow is kind of different. And it would be wonderful to help support that sector of business with ESPC. And so just keep that in mind. And because, I mean, there's a potential for this House Bill 1286 to really start ramp up in the next 5 to 6 years, where we can use EPC to fund these projects for these guys. It'd be wonderful. Just something to consider.
Yep, appreciate that. Thanks, Brian. Definitely something we'll look into.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Jack. So we're gonna move ahead on the agenda. We have updates from our outreach committee. So John and Ashley.
Sure, I can go first. I'll talk a little bit about the 2021 webinar series that we are hosting. We had our first one at this point about 45 days ago, and our next one is scheduled for July 12th. So I think we've got about 7 folks signed up for those. So everybody who is signed up, I recirculated the most up-to-date schedule since we're about a month behind what maybe you had originally seen as your schedule. So if anybody who signed up didn't see that, please maybe send me a note and I'm happy to recirculate that. But otherwise, we'll continue with that webinar series. I think how we kind of view this going is we'll probably finish it through the balance of people who have signed up. And then we'll kind of make a decision on whether we continue that into 2022. It'll probably depend on how our attendance is and whether there's enough value. You know, we've also been doing this a little bit because the conference seasons haven't been happening or have been happening virtually. So as those kind of ramp back up in the balance of 2021 and into next year, again, it's kind of a moving target with how long we'll have this webinar series go. If there's anybody else that is interested in signing up who hasn't already, still would love to have anybody else. We've got a list of potential topics, but you're also welcome to provide your own topic if there's something that you specialize or focus on or really want to put out there into the market. So that's kind of where we sit from the webinar series. Any questions on that? Okay. Ashley, what do you have for updates?
I don't know if we have too many updates on my end. I know we're actively working on the summit too. John, I don't know if you wanted to cover that as well. So I think we're looking at kind of refreshing the idea of an in-person summit probably in early 2022. We have been looking at different venues, which I believe we're going to run by the full group today. Still in the early stages. I think we're looking for people to help chair that event, and we're shaping it similar to the one that was done several years ago within the ESC. So not too much on that, but just kind of in the early stages, trying to get an in-person event on the calendar for next year. And then I think we're actively starting to apply and investigate in-person conference opportunities again to start submitting proposals like we were in 2019, now that conferences are kind of getting back on the calendar. So we're going to hopefully look at getting some of those submitted this fall once the windows open, and then get some of those on the calendar for the ESC to present at in 2022.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. And so definitely let's move on. And I do have a few more details between Joe and I on the summit. I think for a date, we're actually looking at October of 2022. And Joe, I thought we picked a date, but I can't find it in my notes right away. Do you recall?
Yeah, we did. So I can give some a little more detailed updates. And I know, Jack, you and I have been in communication about the deposit. So we were looking at a Thursday, October 13th or 20th, and how we came up with those dates. Just so everybody's like, how do you come up with that date? So we were looking at, we know that September, like summer is, crazy for people. September's crazy, beginning of school. And then you go into November, December, you start the holidays. So you're looking for a date from the end of September to the beginning of November. And we came up with October 13th or 20th. Typically, I don't know how fall breaks fall, but typically fall breaks will fall towards the end of October. So we also were looking at, and we decided to start off as for a 1-day summit. So how will that look? It looks like this. The registered participants come in the morning. It would be opened up to a continental breakfast. We decided that it would be a one stage. So we're in one room for the summit, and we have the educational speakers, one stage coming up and speaking on whatever talks that we have. We looked at venues, and that would include a lunch as well. And then we are even talking about a social hour at the end of the summit. We looked at NREL. NREL is not accepting any events. They're not having events. So I did confirm that. However, they would commit to, we can work with them on having maybe a keynote speaker come in for that. The talked about sponsors, having, our partners come in, manufacturing partners, that we could have sponsors, and tables would be set up for that. We're trying to keep it as economical as possible. Jacques, you had, and I just made your name French. I said Jacques. Jacques, you had said that Rod thought of some free venues. I reached out to Rod, and I forgot, he never got back to me to ask. However, if we go with a free venue, we really have to think, okay, that's even more legwork when it comes to lunch and stuff like that. So we looked at a few different venues, and so John, I know I threw out Gaylord, and there is an NBC Suites, but actually I looked at the Marriott in Lone Tree, and we were looking for a location that was pretty central, that the light rail could come into, and it kind of fits all of those details that we wanted. So, and meet all the objectives that we were looking for, because we're inviting across the state, right? So the Marriott Lone Tree, I don't know if anybody has been to the facility for it. I've been to multiple, and they actually do a nice job. Right now, if we estimate on approximately 150 people, we put a very loose guesstimate of a $20,000 event. So and that's including audio visual, that's continental breakfast, also the lunch, and we're looking at a 10 to 20% deposit. So, and we would charge, it would be a participation charge. However, we would hope that we'd have sponsors to offset that amount to make it closer to a very reasonable, because it's a very reasonable charge. So those are the beginning. I mean, those are our conversations now. As soon as we solidify and say, if we say, yes, that all sounds great, we will break down into different committees. We'll want to have a sponsor committee. We'll want to have a speaker committee to get, to coordinate all that. So that's kind of what we're thinking. And I'm going to open it up to the floor. John, if you have anything that you want to say, or if anybody has any ideas, we are very open in this stage. We're still, over a year out, so we're in a good position.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, Joe. I think we do just want to get a little bit of feedback from the chapter and what people think, as these initial discussions are happening, so that we can then take some direction forward. So, so please, if people have comments, we'd like to hear them.
Guys, this is Karen. I'm curious where the $20,000 budget came from.
They were just numbers that that we're working, like with the menu. I've been working with the Marriott sales department, and it's a high end of lunch and a high end of breakfast, just and incidentals. So, and running off 150 people. So you're looking at breakfast, lunch, and the audio visual, the staging. So the room rental, all of those compiled, running off of a 150 person event. So I just broke it down per person, and it came out to like $133 per person. I think that's on the high end. I just wanted to have something in place for a guesstimate. Are you thinking that's too high for an event like that?
4 years ago, we were looking at a budget of half of that for the same number of people.
Okay.
Was that for the national conference, Karen?
No, that was when we were looking at doing something here.
Yeah, and like I said, that's high end. I don't know what your I don't know what you were planning 4 years ago to compare that to. This might, were you thinking the same type of were you thinking the same type of agenda, like what I just spelled out?
I'm going to take a step back because everybody doesn't need to be on this conversation, but I would encourage you to pull from the people that were planning the last conference what they had planned and how they had come up with that budget. I can just tell you it was half of what you're discussing for the same number of people.
Okay. I would love to do that. Did you have, who was planning that?
I can send you a list, Joe.
Perfect. That
I'll
would be
find it.
great. Yeah, that would
Yep.
be wonderful.
You bet.
How about any other first impressions from the group? Anybody else? Okay, well, feel free to, provide those comments if you have them. I know sometimes in the meeting, people don't always bring it up. So please feel free to email myself, Joe, and Ashley, any further questions that you might have. Again, we're in very preliminary stages here. I think, we're trying to be conservative to start and kind of see, where we are and then kind of figure out what's realistic and come to something that actually works. So, so this is by no means set in stone. We've made zero commitments at this point. To Joe's point, we're over a year out, so we've still got time to figure out a few of these items. However, we do want to probably be putting, if we are going to be having a paid venue, we'll probably need to be putting a deposit down in the not too distant future. Jock and Joe, maybe you could also speak to this. I know that there was some potential leftover funds from the energy office that went unspent in the last year, and I know we were kind of working towards maybe an extension. Any update we can provide there?
Yep, so we were able to get a budget change request on those funds. So there's not really a time constraint on when those would need to be utilized. Still kind of remains to be seen, obviously, what the budget of this event is going to be and how much that deposit is going to be. And, given that, I guess, the ESC has some funds, just, how much that contribution will be from the energy office, since we still do need to run it past, our operations people and all of that. So, but we weren't able to get that budget change request put through. So, yep.
So Jack, one thing that we talked about, would the CEO be willing to just send out a survey just a yes or no, if I know you have a whole database. If we were to put on a summit, would you be interested? Yes, or you know what I'm saying? Because John and I had talked about that and we thought, well, because we were struggling, there's no template for this, right? This would be an inaugural summit. So we would love to know if there is even any interest, if people would.
Coming from the political subdivisions, you mean like in our constant contact sort of list? I think that's something that we would be interested in maybe discussing more a little bit internally. I don't know if I can just give an answer right now, but I think that would be a useful thing in terms of polling some interest among the different political subdivisions in the state. I think that Dylan and I would have to discuss a little bit more, but I wouldn't say that it's off the table.
Okay. And what would they be, and in another, what would they be interested in learning? Other than obviously, right, EPC.
Right, definitely. I think that could potentially shed some light on, gaps in the markets that we're serving and the services that we're able to provide in the EPC program. So see that as adding some value. So I think there's definitely some further discussion that could be had there.
Okay, perfect. So are there any other questions, comments, ideas? We're going to open the floor to just an open discussion, come up with our next meeting date, and then we'll adjourn this meeting. Okay. John, next meeting date, we had discussed as a leadership team about, well, definitely meeting in person, correct? And we were actually wanting to couple that, and you're on mute, John. We're actually wanting to couple that with like a happy hour, just a social hour for to tag along to the meeting.
Yeah, so I guess first maybe we just ask a quick question. How do people feel about going back to in-person if we're able to organize it? Would people be up for attending an in-person meeting for Q3?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Absolutely. Just a heads up, guys. I was in another state for a schools conference last week. 400 attendees. I saw one mask out of 400. So I really hope we can get back to getting back in person.
Great. Well, then I think we'll plan to do the next meeting in person. I think we will probably look, if we're at the end of June, July, I guess, probably end of September, early October for the next meeting. And then, yeah, the idea was kind of floated that instead of maybe doing our typical 1 p.m. meeting, maybe we change it to like a 3 or 4 o'clock meeting and then have a happy hour after, just again, so we can kind of all have a chance to reconnect in person. So how interested would people be in something like that?
I think that sounds good.
Yeah, log it.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw at least saw a few thumbs up. So I think we will plan to do that. So we'll probably look at more like a 3:30 or 4 o'clock meeting, and then maybe a 4:30 or 5 o'clock kind of happy hour somewhere close by. I think we will just have to figure out the location, which is probably to be determined. Yeah, we got to figure out who can host us and whatnot. So probably some information forthcoming from me once we get that a little more nailed down. And I see David Clamage, you asked for both a virtual and in-person. Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll continue to do that and kind of have a hybrid approach. So, we as the ESC have this Zoom account. So going forward, we'll maybe have an in-person meeting, but still host it via Zoom for anybody who can't attend.
Okay. So if there is less carbon footprint, that's cute. So if there's nothing else, we're going to go ahead and give everybody back a little bit of their time. It's 2:09.
You do need a motion to adjourn.
I do need a motion to adjourn.
This
Was
is
it-
Karen, so moved.
Thank you, Karen. And a second? I see a second from David Clamage via the chat. So
Perfect.
there you go.
All right, everybody, have a great 4th of July weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.